Hello, everyone. Thank you for participating in our webinar, How to Migrate to Australia. I'm Fernanda from Information Planet. I'm based in Adelaide. We also have offices in Perth, Sydney mainly, Brisbane, the Gold Coast, and Melbourne. So today we are going to talk to Claudio from Seven Migration. We will explain a little bit more in this pathway moving or from working holiday visa to the permanent residency in Australia. So thank you for joining us today, Claudio. I'm gonna move here. So now we are gonna talk about Information Planet first, and then Claudio will start with the content from Seven Migration. Information Planet, we are an agency for international students with over 20 years of experience in this industry. We have offices in 13 countries around the world, and those offices in Australia that I mentioned before, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Sydney, Brisbane, and the Gold Coast, and Manly. We, as an agency, we help the students with any kind of courses you might want to study, from English courses to higher education, bachelor's degree, master's degree. We work in various destinations such as Canada, Australia, New Zealand, United States, United Kingdom, Denmark, and Malta. I am Fernanda. I'm the manager for IP, Perth, and Adelaide. I am based in Adelaide. We have a very well-experienced team in all of our offices. In Perth, we are located at level 3, 23 Barhack Street. In Adelaide, level 3, number 20 King William Street. Well, now I'm gonna let Claudio explain about Seven Migration and the options of visas that you guys can find to migrate to Australia. Claudio.
Thank you. Thank you, Fernanda. Thank you for this opportunity to participate in IP's webinar. I'm Claudio. I'm the director of Seven Migration. Seven Migration is an Australian migration practice, and we are based in Perth. Our headquarters is in Perth. We share the office with the IP Perth, actually, and we also have an office in Adelaide, which we also share with IP. We also have representative in Sydney, but we see clients from all over the world. We do Skype consultations with people in Brazil, in the United States, Europe, Asia. So pretty much our clients are everywhere. Like I say, I am the director of Seven Migration. I am also a registered migration agent. We have been helping. Seven Migration itself has 5 years experience. I've been here like almost since the beginning, and before that I used to work for IP in Brazil. So that's why in terms of combined experience, it's over 10 years. We've been working with the Australian migration. Okay, next slide.
And guys, if you have any doubts You can type them on the chat, and we will do our best to answer them for you.
Okay, so today's theme is very interesting. We're going to be talking about the working holiday visa and the work and holiday visa. These are two separate visas. Many people don't know that, but there are different kinds of visa depending on the person's passport. The subclass 417 is called working holiday visa, and it's the most common because it's for people who have a passport from Italy, from Germany, from Japan, from Canada, New Zealand. So no, not New Zealand, but many other countries, they come on a working holiday visa subclass 417. There's another kind of visa depending on the person's country, which is the work and holiday visa, the subclass 462. And this is a visa for passport holders of Portugal, Spain, Argentina, Chile, China, Slovakia. It depends pretty much on the person's passport, where the person's country is. They will either apply for the working holiday visa or the work and holiday visa. Pretty much they are the same. What changes mostly is the eligibility. But I'll not be talking about eligibility here because in most cases it's just a matter of the person holding that passport and having no more than 30 years old. They cannot have more than 30 years old. They cannot be older than this age. And well, the work and holiday visas has some special requirements, but it's on a case by case, depends on the person's country. Okay. Both visas have conditions, and it's important for us to remember which conditions of this visa. Every visa in Australia has some kinds of conditions, with the exception of permanent visas. Permanent visas don't usually have conditions, but every other visa have conditions. So let's give us an example here. For example, a visitor visa, there's a condition that you cannot work in Australia. A student visa, there's a condition that you must work part-time only doing your course, and full-time usually on your school breaks. And you cannot, well, you cannot, you must hold an insurance, for example, is another condition of your visa. Working holiday visas usually come with two conditions. 8547 says that the holder must not be employed by any employer for more than 6 months without the prior, I was reading that, without the prior permission in writing from immigration. So what it means is that while you are on a working holiday visa or work and holiday visa, the maximum time you must work for the same employer is 6 months. So if you want to stay longer with the same employer, you must request an authorization from immigration. You cannot work because this visa is designed for people who will be traveling and working. So they don't want people just to be in Australia, stuck in one employment and not using what this visa is about traveling. So they want you to move employers, which usually means that you must move sometimes to another city or something, you must travel. The other condition is the 8548, and it says that the holder must not engage in any studies or training in Australia for more than 4 months. If you want to engage in a study for more than 4 months, you have the student visa. If you want to engage in training for more than 4 months, you have the training visa. So each visa has its own purpose. So if you are here in Australia on a working holiday visa, that's what you must be doing: work and take some holidays, travel around and see the country. Okay. There are some pathways to PR. This is not exclusive for the working holiday visa and the work and holiday visa. This is the pathways to PR for any skill visa or any skill person, they must apply either for a skill visa or employer sponsor. You can apply these visas while you are on a working holiday visa. You can apply while you are on a student visa, visitor visa, or in many instances, even if you never had a visa in the past, or you're not even in Australia, there are still pathways to apply to the permanent residency. The only thing is sometimes it's easier if you use a temporary visa to become permanent visa holder. Sometimes you can use this visa to become eligible for the permanent visa. There are three kinds of skill visas. The 189 is the skill independent, and it's a permanent visa. This is a points test visa. All skill visas I'm going to show you on this screen here are points test. So basically you must hold qualification in the medium long term. Can you go back to the previous screen? The previous one, yeah, the previous screen. The 189 is a permanent visa. It's a points test. You must hold an occupation in the medium long-term list. You must have some other requirements, and you must have enough points to be invited. The 190 is the skill nominated visa. This is also a permanent visa, but you usually nominated by a state. You must be invited by a state. So you must check the state. What do they ask from you? And if you are eligible, then you can move to applying for a permanent visa through the 190 if the state nominates you. Your states usually have their own skill lists, and you have to check if your occupation is in that list. You check how many points they are usually inviting, what they require, and then you request the nomination from the state. And there's a third skill visa, which is the new visa that came into effect in November 2019. And this is the skill work regional visa. This is not a permanent visa, but it's a provisional visa. What it means that as a provisional visa, it's very likely you will become a permanent resident. It's different from the working and holiday visa, working holiday visa, visitor visa, student visas. These visas are temporary. So you just in Australia temporary. It's very likely you will return to your home country after this visa ends, unless you move to a permanent visa or a provisional visa. A provisional visa is usually granted for those for those who Australia want to keep them in the country. They want to give the permanent visa for them, but they must do something before. They have to, I don't know, meet some criteria of this provisional visa before they can apply for permanent residency. There are other three options of pathways to permanent residency, which is the employer sponsor visas. There are also three kinds of employer sponsor visas. And for these visas, you must be sponsored by an employer, by an Australian company. So if you have an occupation on the medium long-term list, you may apply for the employer nominated scheme visa, the 186, and that's a permanent visa. Okay. All the options you have as employer sponsor visa in case the Australian company wants to sponsor you on a visa is the 482. The 482 is a temporary skill shorted visa. As the name says, it's a temporary visa, so it's pretty much similar to a student visa, visitor visa, or working holiday. You're just in Australia temporarily. If things change, you will be affected. So any changes in immigration will affect people who are on a 482. They might, depending on the occupation, the 482 might be a good pathway to permanent residency, but if anything goes wrong in the meantime, and things change, so let's say your occupation is no longer on the list, then it's a big problem for you, because then you still not on a pathway to PR per se. You still temporarily in Australia, so immigration doesn't consider that you were, they don't care if you were trying to reach permanent residency. That was a temporary visa, and if you're not eligible for a permanent visa, so sorry. And the other visa that we have now to apply for permanent residency is the 494. This is the brother of the 491, but the difference being that the 494, you are sponsored by an Australian company. So basically, this is also a provisional visa. So and it's also a regional visa, so you can only work and live in regional areas. But because it is a provisional visa, it's very unlikely you will not reach a permanent residency. Immigration wants you to reach permanent residency, but they want you to be on a regional area for some time before they can grant you permanent residency. So these three visas are usually good pathways to permanent residency. And the 186 is permanent already, so you don't have to, you just, of course, you must have an occupation in the medium long-term list and some other requirements that we're going to be talking soon. And next slide. So requirements for any of the three skill visas, the 189, 190, and 491. These are points test visas. So you must first, you must have a skills assessment. So you must contact the authority responsible for your occupation, and you must undergo a process called skills assessment. For example, if you are an engineer, you usually have to do this skills assessment with Engineers Australia. If you are an IT professional, you usually have to do a skills assessment with the Australian Computer Society. So there are many authorities. Each one is responsible for a specific field. So if you want to apply for a skill visa, you must contact them and do your process of skills assessment. And they have their own requirements. For example, some authorities will require you to hold a qualification. Some other requirements will, authorities will want to have experience or both, but we're going to be talking a little bit more about skills assessment. And for any skill visa, you must have at least 65 points. 65 points is the minimum per law. So per the legislation, the minimum you must have is 65 points. If you have 65 points, doesn't mean you will be invited, because there are other criteria. There are some visas that are more competitive, so they raise the bar, they raise the minimum points to 90 or 95 points or 100 points, as it is now the 189, which is more competitive. And some other options, for example, the visas that you are nominated by a state, maybe that state is very competitive as well. For example, New South Wales or Victoria are very competitive, so they will probably require more points. Or depends also on your occupation. Very competitive occupations such as an accountant, for example, it's usually it usually requires more points because more people are applying and they only will select the best. Whereas, for example, nurses, especially now with the pandemic, with the coronavirus, nurses with a minimum points, many times they are being invited already. So you don't need to be extremely with a high points score to be invited to apply for a skill visa as a nurse. So it depends on the occupation, it depends on the visa you are applying, and depends on the state you plan to apply. New South Wales, for example, is much more competitive than Tasmania. So usually 65 points may be enough for Tasmania, but it shouldn't be enough for New South Wales, for example, right? Skill visas, you can never have, you can never be 45 years of age or older. You must be maximum 44. If you turn 45, you're no longer eligible for any skill visa. There's nothing to do, unfortunately, in terms of skill visa if you are 45 years old. And the minimum is competent English. Competent English is usually 6 on IELTS on each bed. So you must have 6 on listening, writing, reading, speaking, or 50 on the PTE test, or 158, if I'm not mistaken, on the Cambridge Advanced English. So it depends on the test. There's a specific score you must reach to be competent English. But, for example, competent English doesn't give you any points. That's your obligation. You cannot apply if you don't have at least competent English. But it depends on your age or qualification experience. Maybe I will advise you to reach a better English score, like proficient or superior 7 or 8 on IELTS, because then you can gain points from English. So sometimes it's very important that you reach or you seek better results on English, because it's a good way to increase your points. Like I said, you must be invited. You cannot apply because you want this visa. You must apply for an expression of interest. And when they invite you, let's say immigration might invite you for the 189, the skill independent, or a state might invite you to apply for that state, for the 190 or 491, which are state nominations. So you must be invited. So you must first check what the requirements from that state are. And if you meet all of the requirements, then you might be invited by the state or by immigration. If you have enough points for the 189, then you might be invited to apply for that visa. Like I said, if you are applying for the 190 or 491, you must meet the state nomination requirements. Each state is different. Each state have their own requirements, and if you want to be invited for those visas, 190 or 491, you must usually choose one state and check the requirements of that state and see if you are eligible or how you become eligible to apply for that state. Okay. Employer sponsor visas. So if it's needless to say, you must be invited by a company. That's why it's employer sponsor visa. So the company you're working for in Australia, or you intend to work in Australia, must sponsor you. So they must agree to apply for that visa for you, because they have a process that is called a nomination. So they must nominate you for an employer sponsor visa. So these are just the requirements for the applicants I'm going to talk about. We then have to move and check the requirements for the companies, but I will not go in too much details because it's not exactly the theme of this webinar. But for you to be eligible for employer sponsor visa, if you plan to apply for the 482, you must have skills assessment for some occupations. Usually those occupations are trades. Trades, for example, if you want to apply as a cook, chef, carpenter, or bricklayer, or automotive mechanic, or a tiler, let's say, or electrician. So these occupations are trades, and if you want to apply for the 482, you usually have to go undergo the skills assessment process, unless your qualification is from Australia, okay, or some other countries. And you always have to have relevant qualification and experience. Minimum experience, 2 years. There's nothing to do if you haven't worked for at least 2 years in your occupation. And usually you must have some relevant qualifications. So for example, if you want to apply as a chef, you usually must have a certificate for in commercial cookery, or you have at least the experience to replace that qualification. So for example, in the case of a chef, sometimes 3 years of experience replaces the need for a relevant qualification specifically for the 482. It might be different for other visas, but you must you must explain, the employer will need to explain to immigration why he is nominating you, and they are not employing an Australian citizen. So you must prove that you have a relevant qualification and experience. Otherwise, they wouldn't be inviting you. They would be requiring the same level from an Australian. And you must have vocational English. Vocational English is 5 on IELTS. So if you don't have 6, at least to apply for a skill visa or one of the other visas, you may be able to apply for the 482 with vocational English, 5 on IELTS or 36 on PTE. But if you want to apply for the 186 or 494, 186 being permanent and the 494 being provisional, then most of the requirements from the skill visa apply. So you must not be 45 years of age, you must be maximum 44. You must have a skills assessment for all occupations, though it's different from the 482. Now you must have a skills assessment if you want to apply 186 or 494. You must have 3 years of experience minimum. There's no 2 longer. So it's no longer 2 for the 482. Now it's 3 for the 186 and 494. And you must have a competent English. So you must have 6 on IELTS or 50 on the PTE test. So let's talk a little bit more about the skills assessment. So most common authorities are these: Trades Recognition Australia. So if you are a cook, chef, carpenter, bricklayer, motor mechanic, tiler, or electrician, so you are a trade. So you must, if you need to go under a skills assessment process, you must do so with the Trades Recognition Australia, TRA. If you have occupations in administration and some variety of occupations, since maybe some like veterinary nurse or marketing specialist or construction civil construction project manager. VEDA says includes many occupations, and it's not specifically for one field. It has many fields, and basically any other occupation, one of these occupations, they don't fit in any other skills assessment authority, they go for VEDASES. If you are an IT professional, you do a skills assessment with the Australian Computer Society, ACS. If you are an engineer, so you usually do skills assessment with Engineers Australia. If you are an architect, you do with the AACA, Architects Accreditation Council of Australia. And if you are an accountant or finance manager, some other occupations that it's accountant related, you can choose between CPA, IPA, Institute of Public Accountants, and there are a few other choices, but these are the more common. If you will undergo a skills assessment process, you must know that they will all require relevant qualification, relevant experience, or usually both. For example, Architects Accreditation Council of Australia, usually they only require qualification. Trades Recognition Australia, there are some options for people who have relevant qualification, but there are some options for people who don't have a relevant qualification, but they have lots of experience. So they might just assess you based on your experience. But usually you must have both. You must have a relevant qualification and experience in your field as well. Okay, so let's go back. This was a little bit more about the pathways to PR, how to reach PR, and this was not exclusive for working holiday visa holders. This is the pathways to PRs for any people in Australia. They must do either a skill visa or employer sponsor visa, unless of course you have family in Australia. For example, you have a partner in Australia, you apply for a partner visa, or if you have a child who is an Australian citizen, you may be eligible for a parent visa. But if you don't qualify for a family visa, if you don't have lots and lots and millions of money to invest in Australia and apply for a business investor visa, and if you're not a refugee, usually you have to go through a skill visa, and these are the pathways we have available. So let's say for people who are on a working holiday visa, how can they migrate to Australia? How they can use their visa to migrate to Australia? So for working holiday visas holders who have an occupation on the skill migration list, have qualification and experience or experience on that occupation to undergo a skills assessment, for example, and meet all other requirements, for example, are younger than 45 years of age. Of course, they will be, because maximum work holiday visa, you must be 30. So if you have a skills assessment, you have points test, you have invitation from the stage, then it's a good idea to use the working holiday visa to apply, because you have a skill occupation. Your occupation is on the skill migration list. You have the qualification, experience. Very likely you will be eligible for a skills assessment on your specific authority. So then it might be an excellent idea to use the working holiday visa to apply for your permanent residency. If you do have an occupation, if you are on a working holiday visa, you do have an occupation on the skill migration list, and IP consultants can help you find the skill migration list. If you have a qualification and experience on that occupation and it's recent, and you meet all the requirements that I just talked about, then you might be eligible, and I would advise you to, oh, one more. I would advise you to book an appointment with a migration agent, because we might be very close to applying for your permanent visa. Sometimes not sometimes, but in many cases, you will need to work on your occupation to meet, for example, the state nomination criteria. So in many times, the state will only invite you once you have been working in your nominated occupation. So this is a great opportunity for working holiday visas, because they can work full time. This is a great visa to be when you need to work full time in your occupation to meet the criteria, right? So if you need to find a job in your occupation and you are on a working holiday visa, you are in a big advantage, because you already have the work to work full time. But sometimes it can be challenging to find a job in your occupation, right? So IP has a material, they have the career starts, and you can use your working holiday visa together with some help from IP with this material to help you and guide you on how to find a job in your occupation and use. But let's say you are on a working holiday visa and your occupation is not on the skill migration list, or it is, but you don't have enough qualification or experience to apply for to plan a migration to permanent residency, for example. Then student visa might be a better option for you. So you might use the student visa to reach whatever is missing from you, so you can reach the permanent residency. So how a student visa might help? There are many instances that I would advise you to move from the working holiday visa to a student visa. For example, if you don't have an occupation on the skill migration list, let's say in your home country, you always worked in a supermarket, and you were like just like you used to work with stocks in a supermarket. This is not a skill occupation. It's not going to be on a skill migration list. So what your background will not help you in any way to reach you on a permanent visa. So you might need to study something else. So you might need to study some new occupation to qualify you for the skill migration list. So a student visa in this case might help you. It might also be helpful for people who need to adapt to their skills to the new reality of the occupation in the country. This is very common, especially for people in the health field. For example, nurses. Nurses, they usually have their qualification in their home country, and they are excellent nurses in their home country. But when it comes to Australia, it's a different system. The health system is different. So they usually have to undertake some adaptation to the Australian market. And even in cases where this is not a requirement, as it is for nurses or some other occupations, it's advisable. For example, you are from Brazil and you were a construction project manager in Brazil, and you knew everything about construction in Brazil, and you come to Australia and I might say, look, for you to apply for your skill visa, you might need to work as a construction project manager in Australia, but you don't even know how construction works in Australia. Construction might be different from your home country, so it is advisable that you do some studies here, so you can understand how construction works in Brazil, what kind of bricks they use, what kind of measurement tools they use. So it might be useful even if this is not a requirement. You might need to study a course to meet the state nomination criteria. For example, in Western Australia, this is very true for Perth. If you want to migrate through a state nomination in Western Australia, you must study 2 years. There's no other way for you to apply unless you are in a medical or nursing field. If you are medical nursing field, usually there's a different pathway without studies. But for all other occupation that they do have on the graduate occupation list, this list is exclusive for graduates. So you must study for 2 years. So if you are on a working holiday visa and you plan to apply for the skill visa for the 190 in Western Australia, for example, this visa is terrible for you. I would advise you to move to a student visa as soon as possible, because the maximum you can study in a working holiday visa is 4 months, and you will need to study for 2 years. And there are many other states that do have these kind of requirements. South Australia usually requires either work experience or studies or both in your field in Adelaide. Northern Territory, they do have pathways for graduates, for students. Canberra, they usually grant points for people who study. Or for example, Tasmania, they do also have a pathway for graduates. So these states, sometimes they create a pathway to permanent residency for their students because they want to attract international students. So in order to make their program more attractive for international students, they create a pathway. So look, if you come and study on my stage, I might give you some benefits when you plan to apply for permanent residency. So then you will need a student visa for that. And studies also increase your points test, especially in regional areas. So for example, if you study for 2 years anywhere in Australia, depending on the course, of course, we have to assess that. If you study for 2 years in anywhere in Australia, you gain extra 5 points in your points test. But if these studies have been in a regional area, you gain extra 5 points. So you get 10 points instead of 5. So it's very is a very good way to increase points while meeting state nomination requirements, while adapting your skills to the reality of your occupation in Australia. So there are many instances that you will be, oh, wait, where we are? Okay, yeah. And many courses will allow you to apply for the graduate visa and have up to 3 years of full-time work visa after you graduate. Wait, we're moving. Oh, wait, yeah, there. Thank you. So if you think a working holiday visa is a great visa because it allows you to work for 1 year in Australia, maybe 2, have you thought that if you did study, maybe you would be eligible for the graduate visa and have up to 3 years of work visa after you graduate? This is much better, and this graduate visa don't have any restriction. You don't need to only work for 6 months with the same employer. You can be 3 years working for the same employer if you like your job. You don't need to move. So definitely, maybe student visa is more expensive and you need to pay school and you will need to study. But maybe if we plan correctly, you might be eligible for the graduate visa and maybe have 3 years to work in Australia full time rather than 1 or 2 in the working holiday visa. So let's say, okay, so you were on a working holiday visa and you moved to a student visa because I said so, or advice, yeah. When you are on a student visa, a migration plan through a student visa usually takes from 2 to 4 years until you are eligible to apply for a skill visa. This is just a rough estimate, just in cases when people don't have an occupation on the list, they don't have experience, qualification in that occupation. So we need to plan and start from scratch. The person will study a new occupation, will need to improve their English maybe, and will need to gain some experience after they graduate. So it might take up to 4 years for you to be eligible to apply for your permanent residency or skill visa or working holiday employer sponsor visa. So this is a time frame you must have in mind. 2 to 4 years is a very common time frame for people who are on a student visa until they reach their permanent residency, unless, of course, they had an occupation on the skill migration list, experience, and everything that I talked when they were on this working holiday visa. The pathway to PR through a student visa will be expensive. It might cost $60,000 to $70,000 in course fees. Let's say, if I say, look, in your case, it's advisable that you seek to study a master's degree, for example. And of course, it will be more expensive than you being on a working holiday visa, but at least you will be on a pathway to permanent residency. If you don't have an occupation on the skill list, or if you do have an occupation on the skill list, but you don't have a qualification, or you need to study something that while you are on a working holiday visa, if you're not eligible until you study something, you might be wasting time. So don't do that. If you are on a working holiday visa, but you need to study something because this is required for you to apply for your skills assessment and have an occupation on the skill list, do so. Change for student visa because it's just a waste of time. And do invest in your courses. Don't waste even more time on a student visa. The skill migration program is for skilled people. So you must be skilled. Immigration will only invite you if you prove that you have a skill occupation, if you are a skilled person in your occupation. So you really need to qualify yourself. So if it is recommended that you do a master's degree or like a TAFE, because TAFE is more expensive, I know, than other providers, it might be a good idea because this is an investment. This is a new occupation you will be having in Australia. And if you study business because it's cheaper and it will not help much about your occupation, your pathway to permanent residency, it might be a bad investment. I would rather you spend a little bit more money, but then invest in something that you can use and it will help you go into the market and really make a difference in your resume. So of course, is definitely a good investment always. Next slide. This is not next question. Okay, now we are going to talk about 5 mistakes to avoid. Working holiday visa can be an excellent visa for you to reach permanent residency, but it can be the worst visa you can have, and you might be wasting time. Don't use, number one, don't use the working holiday visa as a cheaper way to stay in Australia. If you don't have an occupation on the list and you want to stay in Australia on a working holiday visa because it's cheaper and you don't have to pay courses, what's the point? If you want to stay in a working holiday visa just to save some money and then go back to your home country, okay, then it might be a good idea. But the working holiday visa might be tricky because I found people who are on a working holiday visa for 1 year, they renew their working holiday visa and they were here for 2 years without making any pathway to permanent residency. And when they finally decided to consult a migration agent and say, look, now I want to plan for my permanent residency. My working holiday visa is coming to an end. I don't have, I'm not eligible for any permanent visa, but I want to be eligible for a permanent visa. They're already for 2 years in Australia. They got older. Maybe they did have some experience from their home country, but it got old as well. Or maybe even like when they try to move to a student visa, immigration might say, look, okay, but you have been here for 2 years already. Why are you planning to extend your visa now for another 3 years for you to study English plus a master's degree? So you'll be in here in total 5 years. It's a riskier application than if you were on your first visa to Australia. Not planning on how to use the working holiday visa the best way. Like I said, working holiday visa can be an excellent visa for people who are close to applying for permanent residency and might need to work, for example, full-time in their occupation. This is something you will not achieve while on a student visa. So working holiday visa, if you do have an occupation on the list and you are eligible for a skills assessment, might be the best visa for you to have to meet a state requirement, for example, state nomination requirements. So, but we must first plan and assess if this is going to be the best visa to apply, or if it will be a good visa to apply. Otherwise, we might try another way other than the working holiday visa. Renewing the working holiday visa without considering better options. Sometimes people are already, let's say, people don't have an occupation on the list and they are renewing their working holiday visa just to be another year in Australia. Waste of time. You could be planning your pathway to permanent residency through maybe a student visa, or even people who have an occupation on the list. They might even be already employed by some employer who might consider sponsoring them on an employer-sponsored visa that will offer better options for them to reach a permanent residency. So just renew the working holiday visa just because you have already completed the farm work and you are eligible for another visa. It might be not a good option because this visa will again block you from working for more than 6 months for the same employer. And an employer-sponsored visa will give you more liberty to work full-time for the same employer while you are on a pathway to permanent residency. Not saving money during the working holiday visa. Okay, so let's say people, after all my advices here, and people already say, nah, look, I understand, but I don't have money to go on a student visa. I don't have money to study a master's degree like you're saying I have to. Okay, so not a problem. So use your working holiday visa, but at least save money. Because if after 2 years you have been on a working holiday visa, you still don't have money to move to a student visa, then you really wasted your time during these 2 years. The least you can do while on a working holiday visa is think that you can work full-time. You will not be able to work full-time during your course on a student visa. So the least you must do is save money, because then you will need to move to if you do need to move to a student visa afterwards, or you receive a job offer to work in your occupation on an employer sponsor visa, this will cost money, and you need to have saved some money during the working holiday visa because you can. And basically just summarizes everything else. Don't use the working holiday visa to gain time in Australia. This is the worst concept people have. When people come to me and say, look, I understand I need to study a master's degree, but I don't have the money, or I don't know, I don't want to stress so much and do like a higher education. I know I will have to do lots of assessment, so I'll do just a certificate 3 of business here now just to gain some time. This is the worst concept. You're not gaining any time, you're wasting time, right? So don't think that working holiday visa, you can gain time in Australia. You will waste time in Australia. So if you are wasting time in Australia, the least you can do, at least save money. Tip number 4, okay? I think that might be the end of our presentation. And if you have any questions, if you want to address anything I have or I haven't addressed during the seminar, please feel free to do so. Or if you are on a working holiday visa, or if you are considering going in a working holiday visa, I would advise you to book an appointment with a migration agent, either Seven Migration or any other migration agent, because it's very important for you to check the consequences and the benefits of you being going on a working holiday visa. Don't think, okay, because I am eligible, because I have an Italian passport, I will go on a working holiday visa because I can. No, let's just plan and see if that's the best strategy. Italian people, British people, German people also apply student visas when they have to. So they just don't go on a working holiday visa. They usually do working holiday visa when they are here in Australia temporarily. So it's very important for us to assess working holiday visa. Is it the best visa in your situation for your migration plan? If you plan to migrate to Australia permanently, highly advisable for you to book an appointment so we can plan together. Okay? Any questions?
So guys, if you have any questions, you can send to us through the chat box. And to summarize what Claudio explained to us, we've created a few material for you guys. So with this QR code, you will access our ebooks explaining how to extend your stay in Australia. One thing that I think it's very important to explain to you that us as IP Information Planet, we don't charge any fees for assisting you in your educational plans. So come to see us. We can organize your educational plan together with Seven Migration or the migration agent of your preference. We have partnership with more than 200 schools, universities in Australia. So definitely is the best ways to plan your stay in Australia. So this QR code here, you can download the supporting materials, we've created a few different ebooks to you guys. Also, as your educational planner, we will help you to find the best schools, the best options for the overseas student health cover is the health insurance that all international students must have while they are in Australia. All documentation you might need for the student visa. So everything related to the student visa will be able to help you, as I said, without any extra fee. In our 7 offices in Australia, you will find other services to support you as a student, international student in Australia. So we do help you guys with certificates and short courses and training, free seminars like this one, all information with our partnership with 7 Migration on visas and immigration. Traveling, we have the IP travel to help you guys with flight tickets, accommodation. We assist everyone with jobs and resumes. All of our offices have free access to internet and printing. So anything you need, you definitely will find in one of our Information Planet offices. So if I haven't received any other questions, so if you come up with something, any doubt, you can email us adelaide@informationplanet.com.au or our office in Perth, perth.services@informationplanet.com.au. And to contact any other office in Australia, you can go to our website, www.informationplanet.com.au. Thank you again, Claudio, for joining us this afternoon. I hope you guys understood all this pathway for a permanent residence in Australia. And if you have any doubts, you can contact IP or 7 Migration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.